In this episode of the STEMinar series, we are joined by Kathleen and John Fox. Kathleen Fox is the founder of Creative Arts of Mount Pleasant, a school dedicated to promoting creativity and imagination. Her national workshop, Kickstart Your Creativity, has helped thousands of people enhance their creative thinking. Kathleen has over 30 years of teaching experience. She is also the author of several professional development books for educators, a dozen educational games, as well as 2 nonfiction books for children. John Fox is a highly imaginative business professional and innovator. He has over 25 years of experience fusing creativity and technology to develop new businesses, products, and methods. In the mid-2000s, John built up his own creative technology company, attracting companies such as Microsoft while supporting numerous startups. Later, he brought his innovation-focused experience to Fortune 500 companies, SAP, and Accenture. So, John and Kathleen, tell viewers about ImaginGO.
So ImaginGO is it came from I guess you could say a mental collaboration between Kathleen and myself. Me coming from this corporate side, corporate innovation side, and Kathleen has been in education as well as creative education. Thinking about things differently. Both sides were thinking about different things and differently about solving problems. And so we started talking, and we saw a problem in kind of both fields and how we could bring it together and starting at a foundational level to create something like ImaginGO. And what ImaginGO really does is it creates possibilities for children that we see are necessary for that type of thinking to create the next generation of innovators.
And just to add to that is that as an educator, I always looked for different ways to teach something. You're given this big, hearty curriculum, and you know, and specifics of exactly how you're supposed to teach something, and it didn't always fall in line with the kids in my class. And oftentimes I'd pass by the gifted and talented classroom and be like, wow, what are they doing? I mean, they were up and they were moving, they were collaborating, they were making this amazing stuff. And I started thinking, why aren't we teaching all kids that way? Why aren't our expectations far higher? And regardless of where a student is in their process of thinking or their educational process, they all have imagination. And so how do we train people? How do we get them to practice? How, you know, teachers and students to fuel this imagination and know there are many possibilities? And how do we get kids to say what if versus this is the way to do it? Like, look at everything. So that's kind of, I was really jazzed when we had this conversation, because, you know, you practice and train now, and then when you get into whatever your role is in the way of your job or your career, you already have all these tools to be able to fuel you. And technology, engineering, mathematics, everything, technology is changing so fast. You have to have a different type of students think a different type of way than how we've been teaching kids for the last 100 years.
Yeah, it was very obvious when we compared notes that the same problem existed. So you kind of saw a problem that you start here and you end here, and it's the same. So that's where it was really like, we need to think about how we can make something happen here, and this is how we join forces and using, you know, the strengths that we both have to really address this problem.
And so you all mentioned this a bit briefly, but what sets ImaginGO apart from all of the other hundreds of tech organizations? Because let's be honest, there is an abundance of organizations that are pushing out content and technology and STEM and different content. What sets you all apart?
Yeah, I think it's the idea of this kind of starting from a real foundation of thinking about things differently. not that I know all the different software that's out there, but most of it that I've seen, and most of it that I know, it's really focused on, well, this is going to teach you how to program, or this is going to teach you robotics, and this what this is real foundational. It's to say, well, with things like understanding chemistry or understanding robotics, you can use this as a foundation to build off of that and use those skills to make new innovations, even with children. It doesn't have to be the next big thing in the world or anything, but just, I'm going to take this and I'm going to think about it differently. I'm going to make something different. And that's where we see ImaginGO is a big difference.
And also with ImaginGO, you take what you've learned. So students and kids already have the knowledge, whatever level that knowledge is. If you have a kindergarten level of knowledge or a 7th grade level of knowledge, and then so you have all this knowledge. You are being filled with all this content in schools. But there's a bigger question is, now what do I do with it? Like, where do I go from here? I've got it. I know my times tables. I know what chemistry looks like, but what do I do with it? And then, you start to get kids trained on asking questions, finding where the problems are, finding where the gaps are, and how do I solve problems? And they have the training and the foundation to be able to do that. Because one of the cool things about ImaginGO is that you can start in kindergarten. So you've already built those practices for imaginative thinking. You aren't getting them when you get into college, when you have a lot of freedom to think and ask what if. You're getting them from the ground floor.
And Kathleen, you mentioned something called imaginative thinking. What is that, and how does that connect to STEM learning and what STEM is?
Sure. So just in a very basic way, imaginative thinking is kind of like design thinking. You're asking the what ifs. What about? You are thinking about all of the possibilities, not just one road, one problem, one road, one solution. There are many, many ways to get to solve something. And imaginative thinking embraces that. We encourage that. You get kids thinking real or imaginative, what could happen, what couldn't happen, and then being able to whittle things down to what can really work. But the premise is to really think of all of the possibilities. Have an open-ended thought, have an open-ended question, have open-ended solutions, and never say, well, that can't happen. It's like, well, what if we did this? So that's kind of generally, and John, chime in on this too, because I know you might have additional things when it comes to design thinking and collaborative thinking and so on.
Yeah, I mean, what you said is spot on. It's some of the ways we talk about it is that there's no right answer to a lot of this. You eventually could take something like, so you have to take imaginative thinking, and then you're doing this divergent thinking. So it's essentially brainstorming a lot of ideas that could then be kind of chained on to design thinking, which could go into some more ideas about creating products or designing a new as doing something that could end up with like a real product. So there's still this idea of with imaginative thinking, that's the beginning, and you just training children to think that way. Say, like, my ideas are valid, and I have I'm have enough confidence, help to build some confidence to have that that the ability to drive that idea. Say, like, I have good ideas, I'm going with this, and I'm gonna make it happen. So that's another thing about it with imaginative thinking.
Absolutely. And I definitely think that imaginative thinking can interest youth in making those long-term investments in STEM career fields, as you mentioned, because it is problem solving. It is showing them that their ideas matter, and that the prototypes or the products that they might build out of software like ImaginGO could obviously be used to help help them create other things later on in life. For example, in the demo, they'll definitely see the clip about the grandma trying to get the dish off the top shelf. Well, they may be able to prototype something where older people or elderly people don't have to climb up ladders anymore, right? And
Yeah,
so I
exactly.
definitely think this software can help in terms of building that STEM identity for youth. And so now shifting gears a little bit, how can educators integrate ImaginGO into their current programming? So whether they're a K-12 educator or an after-school provider, how can they integrate this?
Well, that's the ImaginGO was designed as something that's very easy to use, and something that can complement current curriculums. So it doesn't have to work inside it, I guess you could say, but it's again, as a foundational piece, it does add new pieces and new again, new ways of thinking, so that you can apply it to different current curriculums.
And it takes the current curriculum a little bit beyond, and how do we apply it? Again, we know all this knowledge, maybe we know the history of this, or we know the history of that. So what do we do with it? How do we make it work for us? And with ImaginGO too, it's very easy to be able to press a button, and we kind of like to say that the teacher introduces the go-go, and then the teacher or the instructor steps out of the way and lets the student learn, like get out of the way of student learning. Because when the instructor steps back and doesn't say something like, oh, that's good, great idea, that kind of thing, and they just said, let's see the possibilities, that's where that magic happens. That's where everything, that's where imaginative thinking and innovation and really interesting communication happens. So yeah, definitely. It's easy to streamline it into any curriculum, and then get out of the way and watch it happen. So one of the really wonderful things about ImaginGO is that you have a lot of flexibility as an educator, to be able to use the whiteboard or a tablet, or you can scratch all that and you can do everything with a pencil and a piece of paper, which is really lovely, because that means you've got a lot of collaboration. Kids who've been on technology all day long, those gadgets are put away for a while. And the other thing too, with after school and the connection with ImaginGO, is that a lot of kids, it's their time to be creative. It's after the typical school day. They're brainstorming, they're working with other kids that might not be in their classroom setting. So it's a really, really wonderful collaboration between technology and a different educational environment. But you don't have to always be on your gadget. That's the beauty of it.
And so speaking of get out of the way and watching it happen, I know something that in after school, as well as a former educator, something that we often come across is this idea that we aren't as competent as we think we are, as far as computers and new softwares. And so how does ImaginGO support educators from different backgrounds in order to facilitate this? I know it's just as simple as getting the kids to the computer and setting it up and stepping out of the way, but how do you all support educators in administering this?
Yeah, so from a software perspective, as you said, it's very simple. It's web-based. You just press go. But we also have there's a step into imaginative thinking and understanding conceptually what's happening there, and then also as the program runs, there's good times to step in. Let's say, the instructor should kind of step away and make sure the possibilities are there, but there's also good points, and Kathleen has experience doing this, where you're like, this is a good time to step in and maybe push a boost of confidence. Not to say that's a good one, but maybe class wise, there's other things that say, like, well, here's a hachugi and here's some sound. Let's really think about that. What we want is possibilities, because what the class might do is might say, that's coins being dumped out of a jar. That's what it is. And you're like, that's not the point. The point is you want to answer it, but you want to do as many as possible. So keep the, if you think you have one good answer, then make 10 more. And so the encouragement from teachers is to do that. Just keep it going until maybe the time runs out, or there's amount of you have enough possibilities that you can move on in the exercise. So there's those type of that kind of training that that will accompany ImaginGO as well.
And the fact that after school programs, instructors, homeschool parents, everybody brings a different perspective to ImaginGO. And that's one of the beauties of it, because in a roundabout way, when we've tested this and piloted, it's really teachers and instructors that said they were kind of wowed by their students, like, oh wow, I never thought of that, or oh my goodness, what a great idea. We like to say, now you're thinking like an innovator, now you're thinking like an artist, that kind of thing, instead of this is a good idea and this is a bad idea, because there are no bad ideas, there are no incorrect ideas in imaginative thinking. So what we are finding is that it's easy to be able to facilitate this regardless of what kind of background you have. If you're someone who's a college student and you oversee part of the after school program, you are just as likely to start to think imaginatively because of your students as if you are, a 30-year veteran of education and you've been teaching fifth grade for, the last, however, decades and decades, 20 years. So it's a really nice balance, because adults find that, oh, maybe I'll do this lesson a little differently. Not necessarily a ImaginGO lesson, but maybe I'll add this component to something that I've been teaching the same way for the last 5 years. So it really fuels the students and the teachers in a beautiful way. And that different background is a good thing, because in it brings a lot more possibilities. You don't want everybody to be the same, thinking the same way. And teachers are instrumental in being able to see all the possibilities because of where they come from as well.
On the other hand, what about families and family engagement? How can software such as ImaginGO really promote family engagement for providers or for educators in the classroom?
I'll take this one because
I
love this question. Okay, so I taught for years and years at a Title I school, and one of the things that we really we knew had to change in our school is we had to get families on board with students. The education of a student really depends on the support of their family or their outside guardians, whatever support they're having. And so we would oftentimes do family nights, and we'd serve pizzas, and then the library would turn into like a family game room, and the art room a family art activity. And so because you've seen from the demo that ImaginGO, the Go-Go's can span any age group. And we're finding that adults have just as much fun. And if adults and families are excited about the possibilities, then their younger kids, their students, they're role modeling for them. Nothing is a bad answer anymore. Oh, let's look at this differently. You're actually doing a shift for the entire family, which is huge for students, because when students see their family support being engaged and excited about something, they are automatically excited too. And it's just, you have a lot of laughter with these Go-Go's, but you have a lot of big ahas. And it doesn't matter what age or where you're coming from or what you've done. There are only possibilities. And once people know that, they roll with it. And it's really exciting to see multi-generational Go-Go's in action. Yeah, I love that question, because I think that's a key component to a lot of our schools and a lot of our kids' success. Yeah.
Absolutely. And my last question is, how do program providers, educators, whoever is watching this seminar, how do they get access to the ImaginGO software?
To gain access to ImaginGO, just simply go to ImaginGO.com and sign up for an account.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John and Kathleen, for taking time out of your schedules to show us what ImaginGO looks like, to really talk about what imaginative thinking is. And thank you for your impact on youth across the country and internationally, because I'm super excited about the Go-Go's. I love it. I'm so excited about ImaginGO. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shanika.
Want to see ImaginGO in action? Stay tuned for a brief demonstration of the ImaginGO software.
So ImaginGO is actually a larger framework for some of these mini activities that we call Go-Go's. And so as it says here, the following Go-Go's are available for your imaginative thinking pleasure. So of course, that's because the idea here is to stimulate and spark your imaginative thinking. Yeah, there's six Go-Go's within ImaginGO. And each one of these has content that will update weekly or monthly, and there will always be 6 Go-Go's, but we'll add new Go-Go's and we'll remove one Go-Go periodically. So that's good and bad. Sometimes someone they might like Leonardo's Da Vinci, but it might go away for a little while, and then maybe we'll bring it back by popular demand. So we want to keep them fresh. We want to keep the content fresh. It's always going, and that's why we do charge a monthly or yearly fee. So you're not just getting the same content. It's constantly being refreshed. We do have 6 different varieties of Go-Go's, each with a different focus. So Hachugi is an audio Go-Go. Wordinsky is a defining Go-Go. It works with new words. Brain Space is a drawing Go-Go. 10 or Less is about writing microfictions, actually. Leonardo's Da Vinci is about solving problems within a small framework. And Themo is a music Go-Go. So let's jump right into Hachugi.
Hachugi!
So the idea here is to listen to something and think of the possibilities of what that sound could be. So we won't go into specifics right now, but that's the idea. So then here, it's not just one thing. You might be thinking, what exactly is that? I need to figure out what it is. But the idea here is to do more divergent thinking, where you just come up with possibilities. So what is that? That could be this, that could be this, this, and this. So the idea here is from divergent thinking, which means many ideas, many possibilities. And this is done through classroom. It's also done through an individual. So the idea is to get as many possibilities of what that sound could be. And then when we go to this Hachugi challenge, which it's another way of understanding a different pathway of learning. So here it's you take those and you create a poem. But as you also saw before, it could be a rap, or you might have to mime it out. So it's not always one thing. It keeps everything fresh. And then you share it, and that's one of the main activities that happens with all of these, is that there's a sharing component, because it's really a classroom activity, and children learn from other children to see what their ideas are, and they can compare. We're trying to keep it not who won or who's better, but it's more about creating new ideas and exploring possibilities. So let's move over to 10 or Less.
About Hachugi, I'll just interject, is that because you have so many different backgrounds, different educational levels, the possibilities are endless for what that sound could be. And so you're kind of embracing a lot of diversity and differences versus saying there's only one answer. So someone who lives in a rural area versus an urban area, that sound might be very different to each community. And so bringing it together, like John said, that collaboration of backgrounds are kind of fused together.
And we'll do a Hachugi. We'll do a Hachugi for a full demo after this one.
10 or less.
So 10 or Less is about writing microfictions, which is under 10 words. And so we take something like this photo, and we think about how to write a microfiction. So can you tell a story in 10 words or less? Then we make an image twist, which kind of changes it a bit. And now there's a shark there. So then the story changes that quickly, and then at the end you compare the two. How did that change? So, and then Leonardo's Da Vinci.
Invenci.
So Leonardo's Da Vinci is
Whee! Invention!
It's got a little fun guy there. Essentially, it's a scenario-based system, where a problem-solving system. So we create these smaller, relatable problems that you have to solve. In this case, there's a great grandmother who can't get the dishes down. She has these really wobbly legs, and she needs the dishes down. She can't jump on a stool because her legs can't handle that. So that's the challenge. How do you get the dishes down for Granny? And this is the same type of thing. You can, you want to make Granny happy. So you need to understand what can we do? What are the possibilities here? It doesn't have to be one thing. It eventually will be one thing, and because that's just how people are going to work. They're going to try to work it down to one, but then share it with the classroom. All these different ideas, and some pretty interesting insight here, where some people or some children focus on getting the dishes down. Some children focus on stabilizing your legs. So it's not always the direct answer that you're thinking it is. There's always some other things as well that could solve the problem. And then, so the fourth here is brain space. So brain space, it's about kind of filling in these. Well, I'll show you. So it's a way of going from like A to C, or from A to B to get to C, based off of what's missing in this story. It's a visual story. So here we have a nice, what looks like a plain or some nice countryside, nothing, and then there's a house. It's a very basic one. How did the house get there? Is the question. So you have something like that, or on the squiggles, you're essentially, if you look at this, the way that this sailboat is being drawn on the screen here, you essentially have 3 squiggles, and you have to tell a story by filling in each one of these using the squiggle to tell a story. The same goes for shapes. Yeah, you could look at this as like a dog's nose. Maybe this could be a dog, and then over here it's maybe he's eating a soccer ball or something. So there's ways to like think about like how that can happen. This actually uses a similar exercises as Hachugi, where here you write a report as a reporter. So you tell your story as you would if you were writing for a newspaper or a blog or something. So it's a challenge of how to really communicate these. And then the fifth
Word-insky.
Word-insky. So this is we're creating words. So the dog used, there we go for the dog conversation. The dogs use a flogaflex to stay cool on a hot day. So the idea here is to define what is a flogaflex. In this case, where you think about the definition, you think about how it could work. A bit of an invention in this case, you could say, well, actually, I already forget the flogaflex. You can sketch out how it might work, how to explain how it would function, and here's the same thing. Yeah, then you would share it with the class. And then Themo.
La, 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 la.
So you've got you're trying to tie music and the emotions that it brings to character development, and a few other things. So we'll see, like if you play this music. So that obviously you have ideas about your mental picture or how it made you feel. So you go into the emo jot, you start jotting these down. You say, well, it made me feel like this. I thought a little bit like this. I had this mental picture of this. Again, all the thoughts and the emotions that were tied to that are then brought together for pictures, or to kind of draw a mental picture or an actual sketch or doodle of a character that you thought about. Is this the guy kind of creeping up, or it's kind of cartoon sounding? So is it a cartoon? Is the character a person? Is it a dog? Is it Is it a lamp that's come to life? Who knows? So like you have all these possibilities based off the music. So there's that, and then just three things within the user interface that I haven't shown you yet. There is timers for all these. So as you go through these, you can set time limits for doing this to really challenge children. As I guess you've seen this up here is the menu that you can get to all the different ones. And then here we actually have the ImaginGO radio. So when you're doing some of these activities, some of the go-go's, that you can listen to music. And it does have these different channels. So this is like the classic OWL. And classic OWL is more like if you're going to really listen to some classical. So different stations for different moods. Just stick with something kind of happy and fun. And so yeah, so that's essentially the software. That's ImaginGO software.
To learn more about ImaginGO, visit www.imagingo.com. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this and others that we know you'll enjoy. Do you have an idea for a STEMinar or a webinar that you would love to see NCCAP cover? Well, comment below or check out our website at www.ncafterschool.org.